Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening. You're listening to 95.1 KVCM Monarch Radio, the voice of Valley College, streaming 24/7 at kvcm.live and on Twitch at Monarch Radio. You're listening to The Blender, where we mix it up around here, and I'm DJ Starlight. And today's topic is to work or not to work. That is the question. And joining me to discuss this topic is a human resource manager and career advisor, Philip Suba. Thank you for joining me, Philip.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you
Good
for having
morning.
me.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. Philip is not only an expert on giving good advice in general, he's a good advisor on career advice and, like I said, human resources. So he's going to be giving us some advice, tips, and all that kind of good stuff. So Philip, we're going to jump right in.
Sure.
So the workforce, as we know, has changed tremendously since the pandemic. From the salary, from people reevaluating their careers to starting their own businesses, working from home. How do you feel about all this? What do you think about why are people doing this?
Well, it's very interesting that everything happens at this point. Okay. Ever since the beginning of the pandemic, it has made a lot of people, whether you are employees, whether you are businesses, whether you're big business employers, just reevaluate what is happening. Okay. So in short, there's this pause that started and it makes people think, well, do I want to continue working in this role? Do I want to continue doing this? Am I happy?
Right.
Do I want to do something different? So that's a lot of what has stirred up
everything. Yes. Yeah. I've noticed that a lot of people that have been on jobs for 20, 30 years have all of a sudden come up with a epiphany that they don't want to do that anymore. That's not what they ultimately want to stick with for the rest of their life. And they're doing, whatever, either, they've saved up and they're just trying to figure things out, or they've jumped into something. Where do you think they're going? Or, when they make these big changes and decisions to just, put things on pause and start over?
Well, I think that this is something that people have been thinking about in general. Okay. And now they're just presented with the opportunity to do something. Maybe they've always wanted to move out of state. Maybe they've always wanted to try to start their own business. Maybe they want to try a different industry. Maybe they just are tired of doing the same thing day in and day out. It's really different across the board, but this is their window of opportunity to be able to do something.
That's probably the key word right there, window of opportunity. And I guess they figure, this is the perfect time to do it. We haven't had the opportunity in all these, years. The perfect time to get in there is right now because everything is so up and down. There's no, stable way of living anymore. Everything is just wherever it's going now.
Yeah. And, just when people start to get used to, okay, well, things are locking down, things are opening up again, something will happen again that it's like, okay, I think we need to start working from home again. I think we can go back into the office. So, a lot of people are not okay with that uncertainty. And there are people that just don't know how to adjust, or some people that really like it. So that's weeding out who wants to stay and who's okay with it, and who's just going to use it as an opportunity to rebrand whatever they're doing for work.
And that's like I said, perfect opportunity. And actually among a lot of the adult employees that have not changed their jobs since the pandemic, they actually prefer the way that they prefer to stick with that job. And just because they're working from home, it's better for them because they feel like the flexibility is better. They don't have to put in as many work hours, so they stick with the same job because they feel like it's better for them as far as that is concerned. And then we were talking earlier and you were saying that a small group of people actually want to go back. Yes. Tell us about that.
Well, you brought up something about the flexibility about working from home. A lot of people, I'm sure almost 90% of the workforce had to start working remotely or working from home. This solved their problems of maybe finding backup childcare, of doing things that, your extracurricular activities that your children might be involved in, or even anybody that you would be watching after, just to be home, just to not have to be into the office. But, after a while, that novelty does run short for a lot of people, and it's like, okay, now I'm at home and I'm working. I don't really get to turn off my work because it's like, well, my computer's here, my work is here. So I'll just take a small break and come back. Some people forget to take a break. They forget to eat. They forget to do anything. And they're working till all hours of the night. Whereas, when you go back into the office, you're seeing other people.
True.
And you're more often than not, taking a break when you should.
Yes,
right,
right. Yeah, because it's like mandatory to take your break. Basically.
Yeah, so now there's a whole hybrid workforce now that wants to do a couple of days in office, a couple of days from home. And this is another topic that has really come up. What is balance at this point for anyone?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, right.
And this is a big, this is also for
that
the
is
people
a big
that are,
question.
yeah, I mean, what exactly is that balance? For everybody, it's different.
Right. And because it's work and home is all one. Your social life kind of goes in a different direction because, like you said, you're not interacting with your coworkers anymore. Your whole life is right there. Your job and your, life. So you never really leave work. Like you said, it's like that could probably run out and be kind of stressful after a while. Like you probably would get a little bit anxious.
Well, especially for people that have families at home.
Yeah.
How do you turn off work and turn on for your family? Or how do you keep your family life separate from your work if somebody needs you? Or if you need to attend to something at work, or maybe you're taking a meeting and you don't have as much privacy as you think because something has to happen. So it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages too.
To being at home. And speaking of, the advantages, apparently some of the wages are increasing at a lot of these jobs too. So that's a good thing that's happening for people to want to go back. If their wages are increasing to draw more people back in, the wages have increased. What do you think about that? How do you feel about that?
There's so many different sides to this. I think it's good that in a way people are going to be able to earn more. But again, for these people that have been working and maybe have not been working at those wages, they're looking at it, well, why wasn't my job worth that much before?
Right.
Maybe I should be looking for something different. So it's not just a complete part of the solution to offer more money for something. It's how are you going to package something to an employee that would want to come work for you? It's not just enough to get paid a lot. As people have noticed now, whether they have savings or unemployment or anything banked up, they're realizing they need to feel a purpose in their work.
Yes.
So wages don't always do that. So as you can see, your wages are getting raised now, but you're still having a shortage of people
I was just
that
ready
apply.
to say, because people want self-worth. It's like they've realized, you know what, I've got more to offer here than just this, you know what I mean? So if I could put that much effort into this, I could put that much effort into my own thing or, into another job that I really am happy to go to. Because I know lots of people that are so miserable just going to their job every day. And that's people are starting to realize, I don't need to take this. I don't need to tolerate this.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up that point about self-worth, about people needing to find self-worth at work. I do agree with that, but there's also a level of what exactly is that going to be for you? Are you going to find your self-worth in another job?
Right.
What if you can't value what you currently have? How are you going to value that anywhere else? I'm not saying that an employer or a business should not give you that sense of self-worth, but you have to be able to provide that for yourself, regardless of your external circumstances too.
I love the way you said that.
Otherwise, you will always be looking for that wherever you go.
That is perfectly said. I mean, absolutely. Because you think, I'm having problems at this job. Let me just change because I'm getting so much, so many things going on at this job that's causing me, anxiety and whatever. And if I go to another job, things will be better. Well, that's not always the case, because if you switch one job, you'll always have some type of issue at somewhere else. It's not going to possibly be the same thing, but it's going to be something. So the question is, what are you willing to deal with? Are you willing to deal with that set of issues or a whole nother set of issues?
That's very true. I mean, I don't want to seem negative and say that wherever you go, you're going to experience something, but there's a lot to be said about going through these experiences, knowing how to deal with it as an employee, as a person, and not expecting that, well, I can't solve my problem here. I'm unhappy. I don't like the environment. So, I'm just going to go find something else.
Right.
When you're able to take that step and actually say, okay, this isn't the best situation, but you know what? I do like a part of this job. The other part of the job that I don't necessarily relate with is maybe something that I can work on. And people will always say, well, I don't get along with the person that is working. I don't like the way they're looking at me. I don't like the way they talk to me. I don't like a lot of things. Well, I have news for you. You're going to find that everywhere, not just at work, right? And so what do you do when you're in the street and you see somebody you don't like? You just don't talk to them, or you ignore them, right? You can't necessarily do that at work.
Exactly.
But The difference is when you're at work, you're there to work. You're not there to find a way to make everybody your friend, but you do have to find a way to create good working relationships.
Yeah, and that's probably the key right there. Finding a way to make good working relationships from the start, because no matter where you go, that can follow you. That good, working relationship can follow you. That way you will have less issues if you come up with a little way that you can deal with certain things, regardless of what it could be that you run into. You'll have a set way that you're going to be able to deal with things. And that way you can, move accordingly wherever you want to go with jobs.
I mean, in my job, just in general, not just at the company that I'm at now, but one thing that I have learned from my mentors, and this applies to anything in general in life, okay, when something is happening to you that you don't necessarily like or think that is good for you, you are the only person that is in control of how you react to a situation.
Perfectly said. I agree. Yes.
So if you know how you are going to react, and you don't like the way that you react because of someone else's actions or someone's circumstances or your environment, you are the only person that can change that.
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
Nobody's saying that when you don't like something that you shouldn't like it, but you should take it a step further and say, well, this is my reaction to this. Why do I have to have this reaction the whole time? If it's in my power to change it, then you know what? I'll stay in this job and I'll make it work. Well, you know what? I don't want to stay in this job. I'm going to find a different job. Just make sure whatever decision you're making, you are the one in control of how you are going to react and how you're going to feel and how you're going to be in any situation.
Great advice. That is great advice. And I always say, like you said, being in control of oneself is the key to life in general. So especially for career choices in this case, because, you can navigate through once you realize, okay, I've got control of this, everything else falls in line.
Well, this is exactly what the pandemic has done. It has taken our control away. It has taken the way that we're able to think about things, because there's no set way to deal with this.
Very true.
We don't know. I mean, maybe it's done. Maybe there's going to be something that will come up again. But what can you do at that point? What you can do at that point is take what we have done up until this point, okay, and not have the same reaction, which could have been a knee-jerk reaction, which could have been anything that was just like, okay, well, I have to make sure that I do all this.
Right.
That's not going to work now.
Right.
But now that we've gone through, what, 2 years now?
2 years already. Already.
There is a way that you can figure out how to do things differently for yourself.
Yes.
Even if it's thrown a wrench in the works. There's always a way to get past all of this.
So right. And we've had time to think about these strategies.
Oh boy, have we had too much time to think about all these things. I had time thinking about it when I was online for toilet paper. No, not really. I wasn't online for toilet paper. Well, maybe once.
Which that brings us back to that whole situation. You know what I mean? That was really, having to find things, basic necessities. Oh my goodness.
Well, I'm sure they didn't have a problem staying in their job when they were online. But anyway.
Yep.
There's definitely, I mean, I just still can't believe that it's only been 2 years and how much it has affected everything with work. It's like everything that you do is different.
I mean, everything. But it was a curse and it was a blessing to people.
Yes.
I think the pandemic was either a curse to some people because they either, lost certain things that they were used to having, or they gained more than they had to begin with. So it was either one way or the other for people, when it first happened. And even now, it's the same thing. It was either good for you or it was bad for you. And you know what I mean? I have people saying it's either one way or the other.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think that it has had a very, what I call like a time released effect on people. Okay, when things happened, like for example, with 9/11, that happened right away and people were affected by it. And they had to figure out what to do moving forward because the event happened.
Right.
This is prolonging itself through now and probably a little further into this year, that people are not sure how to deal with this. Okay? I'm not going to say that people have post-traumatic stress disorder, but there is a part of it where, you're, okay, well, we have to do this. Well, we can't do this. Well, I need to do this. Well, I need to get back to this. So everybody's so concerned about that when they're finally getting back to, okay, well, what kind of job do I want to do? I want to stay working? They're not in the right frame of mind because nobody knows where they should place themselves now.
I know. It's kind of got everybody kind of in a undecided, frame of mind at this point. It's like you either know what you want at this point or you're still trying to figure it out.
But the good part of all of this is I think now that we're back into like maybe the second year of what people are calling this great resignation, you're more or less seeing who does want to work and who just doesn't want to
go back to that.
And I think that brings up a very good thing for employers, for current employees, and for candidates. Okay, if you're a business, if you're an employer, if you're doing anything, yes, it was horrible that you lost a lot of people, but from an HR perspective, do you really want these people working for you that are no longer happy?
There you go. Yes.
Are you going to be able to keep them happy? Do you want to make that effort when you have this other population of employees that are still with you, that are still loyal, and that are still working hard? Okay, this is your, again, window of opportunity to bring on people that have that same kind of drive. You know, just because it didn't work for an employee that's there doesn't mean that it won't work for anybody else.
Right.
That's the reason those employees are going to other jobs or going for a career change, because they're looking for something different. So those other people that are looking for something different, those are the people that businesses and employers can find. Is it going to take longer? Yes, but those are the people that you want.
Yes, because
so it's not all bad.
You don't want people that are going to be, unhappy working for you, because you'll get poor quality work out of these people.
Well, it's not just about getting the poor quality of work out of them, but you know, that mentality can spread from one employee to another employee. And if you have employees that are really feeling good about their work and they're loyal to the company and they like what they do, you know, the more that they're exposed to somebody that's just like, oh, you know what, this is, you know, I don't like this place. It will eventually rub
it will
off
affect. Yes, I totally agree.
All about being centered too, not letting those things affect you,
which is very difficult if you're not a certain type of person with that type of mind frame. So if you got employees that are constantly talking about how they hate working there and how things aren't working out, that can definitely affect somebody's quality of work and the way that they feel about coming to work every day. You got a bunch of happy people, like I'm going to say Chick-fil-A, you go there, which I haven't been in a while, but they're always so happy. I think that's a part of their agenda, is to be extra happy. It's like that's a part of their whole brand. Be extra happy, extra good customer service. So it seems like even if you're not having a good day, you're happy. So, that's a part of that thing.
I see those drive-through lines at Chick-fil-A.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how any employee there can be happy with that long of a line and so many people.
I assure you that they are extra friendly there. It's like I said, that's a part of the protocol apparently for Chick-fil-A.
Well, there must be something in that chicken.
It's got to be something in the chicken, right?
I see 4 people waiting to speak to me. I'm not that happy all the time. Maybe I need some Chick-fil-A. Anyway.
But I've actually noticed that about that place. And no matter how busy they get, it's like In-N-Out here. In-N-Out burger here is, the lines are wrapped around the corner. I don't know how friendly they are, but
they must be doing something right. If there's a long line of people waiting for it. But that's a good point. I mean, if you like the place where you work, the work is not going to take you over. You're just going to just be motivated doing the work. Now, I know that's very cliche. How do I find motivation at work? How do I do this? You know what? It's just like how you live your life. Okay. If you like the way that your life is, you're going to find a way to enjoy the things that you want to do. Okay. If you want to work, it may not be the dream job that you want. Okay. So if you want to look for another job, great. But when you're in that job, it is up to you as that person, okay, to make it what you need it to be for yourself, for your own self-fulfillment, okay? And I see a lot of people prematurely leaving a job because they think that if they leave, they're going to find their happiness somewhere else, okay, because of the things that were not going right in their job. And that is partly true. I'm not going to discount that from anybody, but I think there's a lot to be said that as you continue working and being in the workforce, whether you work for the same employer, whether you start your own business, whether you do anything, it is really about these lessons that you're going to take
with you.
A very wise person once told me, you do not just learn from your failures. You also learn from your successes.
Oh,
okay? That changed my point of view too.
Exactly.
Because everybody says, when you make the mistakes and you fail at something, you learn something. That's true.
That's a great.
But you also learn something from the good things that you do. And I think that's what people need to hear more
of. They do. Yes, they do. Yes. I totally agree. And we were also talking about the mindset the other day too, where you shouldn't just say, oh, that's a positive thing or that's a negative thing. Tell us about that. The conversation we had is with the mindset of how you should, think as far as positive, negative.
I mean, that was actually something that I learned way back in 2010. I had been laid off from my job at a law firm in New York, and there were about a few weeks in between me starting my first real job in HR in New York, as opposed to just being an HR coordinator or an assistant. Okay, I happened to be in a Barnes and Noble when people still went to the bookstore and actually looked at books and didn't have a Kindle or anything.
Hey, there you go.
And I just like picking up books, and I actually like reading it. I'm just old-fashioned that way. And I saw this one book that talked about resilience in the workplace, and I said, this is a crock of what if I've ever seen it. But
just seeing the title.
I said this is the weirdest thing that I've seen. But then I couldn't help it. It was a thin book, so I started thumbing through it, and I ended up buying it because it had a lot of very simple lessons in it. Okay. One of the things that this author mentions, who is a professor of economics at Columbia University in New York, which is another reason that I was so skeptical to read this. I said, what is a professor of economics going to teach me about resilience in the workplace? Well, he did actually teach me a lot of things. So one of the things that he said was that when something happens to you, whether that situation is a good situation or a bad situation, the minute that you start attaching a positive thought to it or a negative thought to it, which is human nature for anybody to do, you acknowledge the existence of the opposite. So if something happened, let's say I tripped and sprained my ankle, I mean, you automatically think of that as a negative thing because you can't do the same things that you do. You can't. You've got to wear a brace. You've got to do this. You've got to be limited on what you do. So, people will say, well, on the upside, at least you didn't break your leg. Right. So it's like, yeah, but you still get sent into this downward spiral. Like, okay, this happened. It was negative. You think more negative thoughts. He just mentions that once you start going down that rabbit hole, either way, of acknowledging something negative or positive, you attach too much attachment to the situation where you're not able to really move forward. Okay. You know how they say, you should never rest on your laurels, okay, like on what you do well. Well, I said, well, I think I should because I did something well. Yes, but at the same time, it's like you're only as good as your last achievement. And it seems like it's very negative to think that, but in a way it is true. You want to keep propelling yourself forward. Yes, okay? Yes. And whether you do something good or bad, when you start attaching the negativity or positivity to the situation, something good happened. Well, this isn't going to last forever. It's not always going to be good luck that I'm going to have. So it's like you're acknowledging all these things that are happening. So when something happens, he says, just acknowledge the situation, period. That's it, and continue moving forward. Okay. So give us another example about just acknowledging the situation. Okay, so another example that I use at work. Somebody is disagreeing with another person because they just cannot agree on the same thing for one particular thing that they need to get done. Okay, they cannot get past the emotional part of, well, I don't understand why this person is disagreeing. I have a good point. It's able to move forward. And I tell them, I said, here's the thing that you're not looking at. Okay, part of being able to work with people is that they're not always going to have the same viewpoints as you. Okay. How do you know that this person that is giving you an opposing point of view is not adding to the value of your work? Okay. When someone is looking for advice in a business, they don't always want to hear all the good things, and they don't always want to hear the bad things. So instead of framing things, well, this is the advantage of doing it this, and then you do a disadvantage with this, just frame it with the other person's point of view. So you're just giving them holistic advice. And what it is, just and you're not attaching anything, well, you'll have an advantage if you do this and a disadvantage if you do that. You're just framing it, this is what you can do. Okay? I like that. So that's the way that you could look at something and not necessarily attach that negativity. One thing or the other. Yeah. And I know it's very difficult. It is, believe me, for me, when I first read that, I said, I'm never going to be able to do this because I always think this all the time. But it just, like with anything, it just takes getting used to. Yeah. Okay. And it's a lot of things that you can use in your own personal life too. Yeah. What a lot of people don't realize is that all these lessons that you learn about working in the workplace, they're very synonymous with the things that you do in your personal life. Okay. Like when somebody comes to me with an issue, one of the first things that I ask them, of course, professionally, is like, what would you do if this happened at home with your family? If somebody came to you with this problem, what advice are you going to give that person?
That's good. Okay? Yeah.
Because a lot of the advice that you give out on a daily basis really is all about your relationships with people.
Okay. Yes.
Now, I mean, I probably would have a little bit of an issue if they said, well, I punch his lights out, I beat the you know what out of him. Okay, maybe that
wasn't the response I was looking for.
That's not the response. So of course we have to get that person back on track and say, okay, we don't want to do that necessarily. We'd like to be a little more peaceful. Okay?
Oh, that is funny.
But yeah,
you'd have to redirect that whole thing.
Yeah, that's beyond my help, I think.
So some of the ways that you practiced getting yourself used to that type of thought, what were some of the suggestions you would give our listening audience? How you started that, way of getting your mind set on that way instead of just, oh, that was a positive outcome or that was a negative. Like, how did you start shifting?
Well,
what's a good starting point?
The starting point for me, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, but I think everyone will be able to take from this story. I thought the best way to become a human resources professional that people would respect is that I would have to match that same level of passion that my employees were giving me. And that made me too emotionally invested in problems and in situations where I became too upset at how the outcome would be if it didn't come out my way. And that was around the time that I started reading this book. Okay, so really, I think the best advice I can give to anybody is that, and this was actually given to me by another mentor and very good friend, okay? Keep things simple. Don't overcomplicate things with too many questions, okay? Especially when you're dealing with a problem at work, anywhere. The minute you start asking too many questions and adding too many factors in, really what it boils down to, is this really worth a disagreement, okay? Am I placing too much emotion into this disagreement or into this decision?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's a business decision that you are expected to make, okay? The owners of a company, the holding company, the shareholders, the board of directors, they're not going to give a what about anybody that's like, well, I had a really bad day and I just think that we need to do that. When you start attaching all of that, you have to really pare down things to a simple question. And you have to, it's something that everybody just has to do themselves. They're going to have bad days. They're going to have good days. Here I go with the good and bad, but that's true.
Okay?
You have to keep things as simple as possible and answer it with simple questions. So when I saw that happening to myself, because I would get all these like stress headaches and I would just, I didn't understand how to solve anything because I was like, well, if I don't show that I am for my employees and for the employer, I was so emotionally invested in that. That takes a lot out of you.
I can imagine.
Now, when people come for advice, I try to keep it very simple. Okay. And I try to help them remove that emotion. It's human nature to have emotion attached to anything. But when you can see past that and separate that from the decisions that you're going to have to make for work, that's what makes you a much more well-rounded employee.
Okay.
And that's what makes
I guess everyone would have to figure out their own strategy to, kind of figure out how to begin that thought process. They have to come up with pretty much their own way that's comfortable for them to be able to, navigate that way.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, only you as a person would know what triggers you. Okay. Maybe if I said something about a particular topic, you may feel very strongly about that, but I don't feel strongly about that. But when you are aware of your triggers,
that's the key.
Then you're going to know, then I don't need to take this so personally. These are just opinions. Okay. And God knows everybody's been having some sort of opinion for the last 2 years. But it's all about, that's okay to have an opinion, regardless of what the topic is about. Okay, when you start attaching too much emotion to your opinion, to somebody else's opinion, you forget that we're all just people. And the same thing with employees. When you attach too much emotion to your reactions or your interactions with people, it stops you from actually doing work. But that's what you're actually really there for.
Right. Oh, that's very helpful to know. I didn't even think about when we were talking the other day about how that could really affect you in so many ways, physically, mentally, and everything else. So that's good advice there. We're going to jump into the career advice since we're still on those lines.
Okay, my favorite subject.
Exactly.
Well,
so
not my favorite, but one of them.
So Philip is a career advisor, and he always like coaches people on how to, if you're thinking about changing careers, and you do interviews a lot. I noticed that you do a lot of interviews with people. So people that are looking for new jobs out there, I know that interviews are not normally in person anymore. They're like on Zoom. Yeah. What are some of the, what's your take on some of the ways that people are coming into the interviews? Like,
I think what I've noticed in the last year or so is that, people are not very used to doing interviews virtually, and it's not easy, even for the interviewer. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that you have to be much more conscious of. And, you have to remember, you are still making an impression on the person that interviews you. Okay. So it's not about, okay, well, this is virtual, so I can be a little more laid back and I be a little more casual. I mean, maybe in some instances you can, but remember, you are making an impression no matter what.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that has been some of the challenge that I've seen because, aside from the regular audio and technical challenges, which happen almost every time.
Wow.
Okay. People, including myself included, I forget to take myself off of mute, and I find that I'm talking and I'm asking all these questions and I'm looking at this person and they're like giving me all these hand gestures. I'm so sorry. And then they do it too, where they're talking and say, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And I'm like speaking louder and I'm like, they can't hear me. They're on mute. So let me type in the chat. So there's those things, those technological challenges that happen already. But I think for the most part, people are getting used to it. It's I think it's very similar to what you would say, like when an actor is preparing for a live stage show as opposed to something recorded on TV or film. Mm-hmm. When you are used to one or the other. So when you're transitioning from one to the other, it's not always the same principles that apply. Yeah. It's a different kind of projection that you have to do. It's a different appearance that you might have, when you're on camera, as opposed to just being seen live. You have to be a little more conscious of what you're doing.
So, well, give us some, some things that you've encountered with some of these live interviews.
Let me see. Well, I'll tell you some of the interesting ones. And of course, I won't include any names or positions or anything. I did have a candidate just a few weeks ago come onto the interview, and it was a very, very nice interview. They were very smart, definitely knew what to speak about, and I was about ready to ask another question, and I heard the rustling of a bag or a wrapper, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I saw them like opening up a small bag of chips.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Are you eating?"
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, I just got a little bit hungry. I had the munchies, and I said, "Really? During this
right?"
She's like, I promise it'll be really quick. I said, I had to cut the interview short from
there.
No matter how good her answers were or what she was doing, that's just poor judgment.
You got that hungry in the middle of an interview?
Maybe I should take it as a compliment that this person got really hungry and wanted to eat something when they were talking to me. Maybe it meant, I was whetting their appetite in some way. But no, I didn't see it that way at that time.
No.
And then another thing that I've noticed too, this happened recently too, whatever job you're applying for, how you appear on a Zoom call, a Teams call, whatever virtual platform you have, you should make an effort to dress up a little bit.
Right.
Okay. Especially if you were going to have an in-person interview, don't take for granted that just because it's virtual that you can be casual. Yeah. Again, I had another great candidate with very good credentials. And when the audio finally came up and when the video finally came up, I just looked at this person. They were in a raggedy sweatshirt.
Oh my
her hair was up in a scrunchie. And for a minute, I thought I was back in high school in 1988. I was about to bust out my champion sweatshirt. And I said, I had to ask. I said, you do know that this is an actual job interview, right? She said, yeah, I know. And I said, so may I ask you, if you were to come in for an in-person interview, when this was not a Zoom interview, this is what you would choose to wear for the interview? And she goes, I figured it's a more laid back environment. I said, well, thank you for your time.
Right.
I hope you have a nice day.
Oh, wow.
Those are just very extreme cases, but there's other cases in between where it is difficult. Being on camera makes a lot of people feel very nervous.
Okay.
So another piece of advice that I give people, you should you should definitely rehearse.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if you're, especially if you're going to be asked a question and you're going to be thrown off guard, not that you have to rehearse every single situation, but you should feel comfortable listening to yourself
Yes.
on a recording or
That's good
recording
advice.
yourself.
That's
okay?
good advice.
Whether it's on your phone, if it's just for your own personal use,
yeah,
just so you can hear how you sound
yeah,
and you can see how you appear.
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So, I mean, that's a tip that gets people feeling more comfortable. The same way that I would give people a tip if they're going in for an in-person interview: be yourself. Don't be too stiff. Show who you really are. Be honest about what you are, because it will come up if you don't know something.
Yeah.
But if you can be relaxed and professional in both cases, that's all I could ask for.
Yeah, and first impressions are everything. First impressions are everything. So to me, it's almost like, I guess, like you said, after the pandemic, it's almost like people have gotten so laxed on a lot of things. I would have never imagined coming to any Zoom or otherwise so relaxed, like I just walked my dog, or I just woke up and just rolled over and said, oh, hey, yeah, this is how I'm, Now, if you had a good reason, like, I had to stay up all night with my baby and, I had half sleep, but even that would still not, warn you coming with sweatshirt and hair look like you just rolled out of bed. Bedhead.
I'm not even going to get started on that. I could tell you many stories about that, but that's very true. And you know what? Even if you don't get the job that you're applying for, that impression does last.
Yeah.
What you want to do is leave a good impression, because if you've got very good experience that someone is looking for, even if that position that you're applying for is not specially for you, they will keep you in mind for a different position. Okay, because of the impression that you left.
Yes,
and because of how honest you were. Okay, I've seen that happen where we have interviewed a lot of people at any of my companies. They were not necessarily the right fit, excuse me, but they have good experience. And we say, I end up talking to another hiring manager and I said, if you ever need somebody, they have very good qualifications.
Wow.
Remembering
that impression.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think that's very important for people that are also trying to make a career change too, since you mentioned that earlier. Don't get discouraged if you're not going to get the job that you think you want in the beginning. Okay. When you have these interviews, your mindset should be, how am I going to open up a new opportunity for myself, even if this opportunity does not necessarily fit for me?
Right.
Okay. Because I am a very firm believer that if something is meant for you, it will happen. And if it does not happen, that means that there's something better that will come along.
I so agree.
Okay. And that there's a reason that it didn't work out.
So agree.
Okay.
With you. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And that's the other thing. It's showing up and showing out, showing that this is what, I'm presenting to you. And it shows pretty much what you're going to do throughout the time that you're going to work.
Yes.
So if you come, halfway, it's almost like showing the employer that I'm going to give you half of quality of work. I'm going to give you half of me. I'm not going to give you the full, because I didn't even take time to put myself together to show you that I'm a full capable person. It's almost like, well, this is what you get, half of what I'm going to be, willing to give. And I can only imagine when you, see these people, what your thoughts are with that. Like, does that reflect on what you think their quality of work is going to be when they show up like that?
Well,
or if they're going to give half of their self? Let's
just put it this way. There's only so much you can know about a person in an interview, whether it be 10 minutes, 30 minutes, a full hour. So I'm going to get the impression that you leave with me. And I want to be very clear with this too, that there are also interviewers that are not very personable either. I mean, I know I've seen that too in my career, but here's the other thing too. Aside from how you appear on camera or how you appear in person, okay, if you happen to get this interviewer who's just bored out of their mind, or just, okay, here's another resume. Remember, this person has probably looked at hundreds of resumes and probably asking the same boilerplate questions all the time. What can you do as somebody that is applying either for a new job or making a career change? Make it your purpose to build a rapport with that person, even if it is very difficult.
Yes,
okay. Ask questions that you feel are relevant to the job.
Right.
Okay. Especially because I see that a lot of people, they're just making mass applications to jobs now, and they're not really knowing what company they're applying for.
Oh, right? Well, that's another thing. What should going on an interview, what should you pretty much expect that they should prepare for?
Yeah. I mean, look, unless you're an expert in that particular industry, I'm not going to say that you need to know every single little thing and analyze all the data that's out there for a company, but you should at least know something about what that business does. Maybe their competition, if they have any, or maybe their target market or whatever. Nothing too deep, but you should show an interest in where you're applying.
I agree.
Okay, because if you get these interviewers that are just asking you these boilerplate questions, okay, then you have a way of really exchanging information.
Interjecting some knowledge.
Maybe you can change the whole mood of the interview. Maybe you can get that interviewer a little more interested in you. Maybe they're not used to people saying, well, I understand that your company does this. What has your experience been for the time that you've been there? I don't think that's a bad question at all for a candidate to ask. That's actually a good thing that you should ask, but you should also be genuine about it. I can always tell when people are rehearsing questions and they get, so what does and it's not that they're bad questions. Okay, but you also have to think for yourself, when you're applying for a job, is this something that you really want to know? Or are you just asking this because on the internet it said, these are the 10 best interview questions. Ask what a typical day is like. Okay. I mean, yes, you want to know what a typical day is like, but you don't want to assume that every day is typical. I would want to know. So, what has worked in terms of the people that you've brought on? Like, what kind of personality works best? What kind of experience works best? From what you know about what you've heard from me in this interview so far, do you think I would be a good fit for this position? That shows a lot of interest. Maybe sometimes it's a little forward, but I would want to know that too. I would want to know too if I'm going to continue on in the process. And that shows the person, oh, okay, yeah, they are interested there.
That's really good to, that you're saying that, because I would want to know that, but I wouldn't feel like comfortable to go forward and actually ask that. You know what I mean?
Again,
so knowing that that's a good thing to put out there.
It is. And you just have to be very professional about how you do things. Not like, okay, so what? Am I going to hear from you like tomorrow, or like what are you going to do? Okay. I had a candidate email me back like, so what's the 411?
Wow.
I said, wow, somebody actually really emailed that to me. And she didn't use her full name. She had like a stage name also in her signature. And I said, okay, I guess, I guess the 411 is 000 on this one, So it's all about the impressions that you make. Definitely show interest, but you also have to be considerate of who your audience is.
Exactly.
So the types of questions that you ask are just important as the questions that are being asked of you by an interviewer.
So that's one of the biggest mistakes probably that people make, is the way that they're approaching things.
I wouldn't say that it's a mistake. I would just say that it's a missed opportunity. They're very much about, okay, how do I answer the questions that are being asked of me? But they also forget that they can ask questions too. Just make sure that it makes sense to ask something. Don't ask something completely out of left field that has, that's not going with the flow of the conversation. And of course, you have to feel like you really want to know the answer.
That you're not just like, saying it just to be saying it, just to appease the person. Like, you genuinely want to, know these things.
I mean, I have questions that I ask during an interview, but I also look at what kind of position it's for, right? But when you get like these typical questions that might be like, tell me about your strength, your biggest strength, tell me about your biggest area of development. I mean, I think you should be able to talk about something, but don't make it all about you. Okay. When someone is asking you, what is your biggest strength? Yes, say what your strength is, but relate it to how that is going to benefit the work that you're going to go into. Okay. Not just, I was able to improve this. I was able to increase the sales by this much percentage. I was able to hire a team of whatever. Okay. When it's too much, I did this and I did that. The interviewer or the hiring manager is not hearing, well, how does that relate to what you can do for our business? Don't ever forget to do that. Yes, you want to talk about yourself, but you want to talk yourself into the context of what that job is going to do
and how you can benefit them with your skills.
Why do they need me? Why would it benefit an employer to have someone like me? Because I can do this and I can help enhance, improve upon. Don't assume that I can just help your sales in general.
Yes,
like
right.
if you were going to say something for sales, you're telling this interviewer, you have poor sales and you suck. And if you don't get me, I'm going to do everything for you. Right? You also don't want to come off that way.
Yeah.
You want to build upon whatever successes they have, and you coming on board is just going to be an asset for them because you've been able to do this in different jobs.
Right.
In my role in this job, I was able to work with or partner with or collaborate with, and together we were able to improve upon, to develop upon whatever, and bring that over to your new job.
And that
makes a big difference.
Advice. Yes. And
but you have to mean what you're saying.
And you can tell when someone's genuine.
You can tell when someone is just saying it for the sake of saying it.
Wow.
That's why I say, not that rehearsal is going to do that, but you really have to know what you're looking for.
Right.
You will be easily spotted if you're just looking to get into another job and just saying the things that people need to hear. People will be able to read through that, especially now. Everybody's instincts have become much more heightened because they can tell, they have to see what things are like over Zoom, over Teams, over virtual platforms, just as much as they can see it in person. Okay?
That's right. Yeah.
So, you've probably been in a situation where you've had to think about buying something and the salesperson is telling you something and you're like, this person is just feeding me a crap. Right? They're
Which
not really
turns
interested.
me completely off.
Exactly.
It's the approach that it happens every time. That's like when I'm going into the store and someone's saying, just sign this petition. It's going to help homeless. But then I saw this one guy one time that was like, and he had such passion about it. If you sign this petition to, stop the homelessness in California, it really will make a big difference. But the way that he approached the situation, I was more engaged to stop what I was doing and go ahead and sign his petition. Because of the way it was the approach that was so genuinely concerned about that issue. I really felt like he really does want it. He really does care that homeless people need help, and that made a big difference. And so I can only imagine how that's transforming over to your career,
And the last part of it I'm going to say about that, about making statements and saying things. When you're giving examples of yourself, again, this is very, very important. Okay. I hear this all the time. Okay. I'm a very detail-oriented person. I am very organized. I am someone that you can depend upon. All these things that people
we've all known to say.
Everybody is taught to say these things. Okay? Advice for everybody: substantiate those statements. Support those statements with examples. Okay. Anybody can say like, oh, I'm a people person. I would make the best HR person. Well, anybody can say that. What are your examples? What are you backing that up with? Right. I think that makes a big difference.
That does make a big difference.
And that also helps the flow of your interview. Okay. You are also telling people very concrete examples.
Can you give us like an example of something that you would be looking for?
Well, we just had an interview recently about someone that was telling us that they were detail oriented and they were organized. Now I let this person speak about everything that they did. My last question to them before ending, I said, you mentioned that you're detail oriented and that you're organized. Okay, I'd like to know, how do you keep notes? Do you keep a notebook? How do you keep track of that? Give me an example of how you are detail oriented in keeping all of these notes, or keeping your priorities in check in terms of what you have to do for work and what you have to do personally. Well, he went into separate calendars.
Wow.
He actually had a notebook where he handwrites everything. And he showed it to me over Zoom. He shared his screen. Of course, he covered up any confidential things that were there. His own personal calendar where he blocks off time. Personally, professionally, and for anybody that he supports as an executive, because he was a virtual executive assistant. I was very impressed with that. And he went into a lot of detail, like, when this happens, when travel happens, when coordination happens, I do this, it goes onto this calendar, and this is how I take notes for this. I mean, this is a very good example. But see, he was able to substantiate that. Now, if I feel that someone is not substantiating anything, I will ask a question like that, because I want to know, is this person really organized? How do they prioritize things? Even if somebody were to tell me, I have a great marketing background. I was able to work on this campaign. Okay, so anybody can show what they've done. I asked them, so how did you come up with this? What was the thought process? Who did you work with? Tell me everything. A to Z. And if they're able to describe it, then I can pass them along to the next hiring manager. Okay. I may not always know exactly what somebody is looking for, but at least in the very beginning, I try to narrow it down by people that can, substantiate things about what they say or what they're doing. Right. Because then it's a waste of time for the next person interviewing if they don't do that. So as much as possible, sometimes it works the other way around. Sometimes the hiring manager wants to find these people and then give them to HR and say, I interviewed somebody good. Can you, feel out their personality and see if they would be a good cultural fit. Yeah. Cultural fit is very big.
And cultural fit, give us kind of define that for us.
I'll just substantiate it. Like I'm using one example.
Okay. Okay.
When someone comes in with very good experience to an interview, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be the right person for the job. Okay. Experience is very important. I give a lot of credit to that. But if you're not going to be able to assimilate into the culture that already exists in a company, okay, no amount of that experience is going to, overtake that. A lot of what I've seen, and this is a very common thing and very explainable too, okay? You have a lot of experience, you come in, you want to observe, but you immediately see things that don't work and you want to change it right away. Okay. Now, what is the flip side to that? There is probably a reason that things are being done the way that they are in a certain company or in a certain environment.
Right.
If you don't take the time to understand why it's been like that, your suggestions and your recommendations, regardless of your experience, will not be taken well. Because people will think you're just coming in to try to reinvent the wheel and change everything without listening to how we were doing things. Okay, it may not be perfect, but who are you just because of your experience to say that we need to do it this way? You know nothing about what we've done the past number of years, right? When someone comes in, if I can see that this person is too set in their ways, I don't think that it would be a good fit for a particular company. But then, that may work elsewhere where people are looking for someone that is cutting edge, that is going to revamp everything from soup to nuts in the beginning. Right. And that would work.
That's if they asked for that requirement, then that would be one thing. But, just to kind of take it upon yourself to do that.
So it's really about the cultural fit, wherever you work. Okay. A culture exists. Okay. Whether you agree with that culture or not, that is the culture that's built with the employees that are there, with the people that own the company and the clients or anybody that works with that company, okay? You have to know also as an applicant or as somebody looking for a job, is this the kind of environment that I want to be in, okay? How do I feel after interviewing with these people? Do these seem like people that I would want to work alongside or report into? It's just as much an examination on the applicant side as it is on the employer side.
That is really good advice right there, because you overlook those things when you go into these situations. And those are the most important things to be looking into and to focus on, because those are things that are sometimes either make or break you.
Bottom line, be strategic and be well thought out about where you want to go and what you want to do. Don't just apply for the sake of applying. Okay. Because unless you just need the practice and want to do that, that's great. But, as you start figuring out what it is that you're good at and what you could contribute to a company, then look for the types of companies that you'd like to work with based on industry, based on what you've heard. And again, the final thing here too is that, I don't downplay reviews that are written about companies. Okay. Anybody should feel free to write about their experience with a company. But just like I treat things with movie reviews, with theater reviews, that is a very biased take on a company. I think you'll know more when you go through the interview process.
Right. Okay.
If you can take it into account, but I don't think that it's always representative of what a company actually is.
Because that person's opinion, basically. And let's face it, you have to form your own when you.
How many people actually write very good reviews about their employer? I mean, there's that select few that do that, but more often than not, when someone is writing a review about a company, they want to really blast that.
Because they've had a bad experience.
So that right there, yes, it will tell you something, but it's not going to tell you about your experience.
I was just about to say that was their experience, and that was their experience only. You'd have to find what, your own experience with that interview. And speaking of, changing up careers, we actually have a good friend that went from,
Yes.
owning her own business. Like she started off. So
yes, she started off working at the company where I'm at right now, and she had always wanted to get into aesthetics. So she actually went to school for it. She went at night while she was working during the day. She worked very hard to get it.
wow.
It was very sad when she left the company because she's a terrific employee, great attitude. But you know what? She ended up going to a spa. She practiced. Unfortunately, the onset of COVID-19 happened, and of course, she was furloughed for a little while. But she's an example of somebody that said, you know what? I have always wanted to start my own aesthetic practice. And even if it's just very small scale, she did it a year ago, and she found the space, she found the tools, she found the education, she found the products, which happened to be the company where I'm at, which is thankfully very good. And I did go, but she took it upon herself to do that, and she took a big risk.
That is, yes,
but it is. And in the middle of everything that was happening a year ago, she did it, and she established herself. She's very successful in what she's doing now, and she's building more clientele. So, sometimes, maybe you are that person that needs to work for yourself.
I was ready to say, take that second, leap into figuring out, okay, is this something I want to stick with, or do I want my own thing?
Yeah.
And that is a big deal. That is a huge big deal to start your own company like that.
Some people want a consistent paycheck, knowing that they do this from Monday to Friday, maybe sometimes on weekends, and getting this paycheck. And some people want to be their own boss and have the right mind to do things. And you know what? That's great.
That is.
Because I don't know that I would be able to do that, but I am very much in admiration of people that can do that, because it's a huge risk.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And actually, she has a spa out in Burbank that she does very well. I'll probably have her on.
Right by Porto's. You'll never be able to miss it if you know Porto's in Burbank.
That'll probably be our next topic, will be skincare, because you're also an expert in skincare. Philip has a lot of different things that he's good at, and skincare is one of the other things that he's an expert
at least one of the things that I can mention on here. Yes. No, I'm not an expert in skincare by any means, but for sure.
You've given me some great skincare advice, that's for sure. So he's my personal expert. That's he gives me great skincare advice for summer, winter, dry skin, oily skin, whatever. So that's
because I have the most complicated skin. Nothing ever worked for me. Nothing. I was about ready to just grab a bar of ivory soap and hope for the best. There's a lot of tips. Of course, the person that you mentioned, she would be able to give a lot of more in-depth aesthetic advice. But I think just in general, there are certain things people should know, just what to look for. Especially because I had so much trouble looking for something that actually worked. It's a great topic to talk about.
I'm gonna definitely. This was a very interesting topic. All of what we talked about today was so informative. I appreciate all of your advice. I hope everyone out there got some good advice from Philip, because he really has informed us on so many good issues, so many, good tips and tricks to use when you're
thank you for
doing interviews.
I'm glad that I was able to say things to people that hopefully they'll find useful.
Yes. Well, that's what this show is really all about. That's why I call it the blender, because it's a mix of all types of information, and, and you've brought that to the table tonight or today, because you gave us a wealth of information. Oh my goodness.
No skincare consultations. Okay. I'm not an esthetician, but I'll give some advice.
And there you go.
I'm just putting that out there, because I don't want anyone to think, oh, he's going to be able to. No.
He gives me great skincare, but I will have the esthetician we talked about on one Sunday, and she can give, the advice to different people.
For sure. I think that would be great, especially with summer coming up.
As I say, some summer tips, and stuff, but this was awesome.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to be on here next Sunday, and every Sunday at 11 and 2 Eastern Standard Time. So everyone stay tuned, and we're going to have Christina coming up next. As always, stay positive, test negative. That's my motto. That's my motto. So everyone enjoy your day, and Christina's up next. Thank you, Christina. Take it away.